Well, yes, this is Rise and Shine. This is Francis and Uyai calling out for partnership on Rise and Shine this morning. Of course, we want you to stand shoulder to shoulder with us whilst we spread, good media information around the nation and beyond.
Well, definitely, that couldn't have come any better. I mean, as far as we're here, we're always going to take you around Nigeria and indeed Africa and the world as far as the latest developments and happenings that concerns our collective growth, collective, advancement as a people is concerned. And right about now, we know that Nigeria is very hot. A lot of things happened between yesterday morning and today. And for me, the one thing that is standing out is still very much fresh in the minds of Nigerians. The one thing that everybody's literally, reacting to is the fact that, just last week we were told there's going to be a possible hike in the prices of, cooking gas. And we've seen that happening. And now, of course, yesterday we also saw marketers coming out to tell Nigerians, unless something is done about the, dollar crisis, we might be witnessing another era of increase in the pump price of petroleum products. And of course, Nigerians have reacted to that. And literally the streets, that's what everybody's talking about. We started with 515 naira thereabout, and then we moved from 515 naira to 600 plus. And now we're talking about the possibility of 720 naira. How much would that amount to the fares people pay on transportation? How much would that affect the people working? How much would that affect businesses who have to depend on, fuel to run their businesses? And the impact that will have on the generality of the Nigerian people is just one thing that one cannot begin to sit down and imagine. But then the outcry is the federal government needs to urgently address, whatever is making the naira fluctuate as against the dollar, regardless of, whatever scenario might be playing out. It's expected that Ahmed Bola Tinubu, through the different, foot soldiers he has put in place as ministers, will readily, speedily, and the Central Bank of Nigeria will rise to the responsibilities of ensuring that the naira, performs strong against other currency, particularly the dollar, so that, importers of premium motor spirit petroleum products will be able to have a good time and, of course, bring it down to Nigeria. And we could have a better, maybe a normalized to a large extent price for the petroleum products.
Of course, that's the most topical conversation as of this morning. We even see the NLC moving to threaten to go on an indefinite strike. But before we go into the belly of that conversation, which is the most important, one of the most important conversations this morning, let's look at some of our flash stories. Yesterday, there was a video making the rounds on the internet, very, very gory video. Of course, we saw a LASMA agent being brutally manhandled by men of the Nigerian military now. And, everyone was wondering. I think the first place I saw that, video was Alibaba, who posted it and was asking what exactly is happening here. And you needed to see the way the LASMA agent was manhandled. It wasn't even funny. Now, background to the story. This is more like a fracas between the Nigerian army agents and the LASMA agent. Why? Because they opposed traffic. And if you remember very well, when the IGP of police, Egbetokun, came on board, one of the things he said to the Nigerian police force was the fact that they were no longer going to tolerate, members of the police force driving against traffic, or for that matter, beating any kinds of traffic rules. And, of course, that was for the Nigerian police force. We are now seeing, a LASMA agent who was probably doing his duty in the course of all of this, get seriously assaulted, by men of the Nigerian military. But this morning, we see that the Nigerian army has said it will begin a campaign for traffic compliance amongst its officers. As no fewer than 5 yet to be identified soldiers attacked an official of the Lagos State Traffic Management Agency on Monday. Now, we saw, of course, this 31-second viral video making the rounds all over the internet yesterday, conceal the identities of these soldiers, and at least 2 civilians, one of whom also marks his face, attacking one of the agency's official. Now, last month, official kept screaming for leniency. One of the soldiers was seen kicking him with his boot. It was really brutal. I don't know if so many of us have seen that video. I'm not sure it's something we can show on the screen this morning. And of course, we see the fact that despite his plea for leniency, the army officers just kept going back and forth. At some point, they ran back to their vehicle to get, something, and just kept pursuing the guy who kept trying to run. So this is a really, really serious issue. And corresponding reactions everywhere. But now the Nigerian army is saying they are going to start a campaign to make sure that soldiers are obeying traffic rules. I think it's high time this information cuts across all forces in the country. It's incessant. You'll be in a traffic waiting and trying to move, and then once you just see a police vehicle, worst of all, if it's Nigerian army, you're just everything okay. We have that video or a picture of it on the screen. Once you see the Nigerian army, everyone just seems to dive out of the way. Beyond just manhandling other people that they find on the way, some of these things cause accidents, because when it is not the time for that particular lane to be in transit, what if the people whose turn it is to be on transit decided to use their time of road, and then we begin to see incessant road accidents? So there's a lot of sides to this issue, but this was absolutely unacceptable.
Well, Nigeria is one funny country that you have leaders at the respective government agencies, the armed forces, sitting down, watching as things go wrong, and they always oftentimes will just act as a reaction or in the reaction to things that have actually gone out of hand. When we saw the acting inspector general of police, Egbetokun, coming out to say police were going to obey traffic rules, you ask the question, even in Akwa Ibom state here, do we see policemen actually obeying traffic rules? Is it actually being implemented? Because it's one thing to issue a directive from the force headquarters in Abuja, is another thing to monitor the compliance by the men and women of the Nigerian police force. And traffic rules ain't something that should be obeyed by just the common man in the Nigerian society. It is meant to protect lives and properties. And who are the most responsible persons who should actually implement this and lead by example? It is the men and women of the armed forces, from the military, the Navy, the Air Force, the Nigerian police, the Civil Defense Corps. Each and every one of these armed organizations has a responsibility of actually obeying these traffic rules. But sometimes, today is with the last mile officials. I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing that will pop up will be Nigerian military and members of the Road Safety Corps. Because when people feel just because they are saddled with the responsibility of protecting lives and property, just because they have access to arms, just because they are wearing a uniform that doesn't allow an average person to touch them, which of course will also be considered as a criminal offense or as a crime, they can do and undo. Now, it's one thing also for the military authorities to come out and say, we are going to carry out a campaign. But literally, we also know that that might just be another mouth proclamation that might not see the light of day and might not be implemented. There is literally no part of this country that the Nigerian military or military men, even when the ones you see on their bikes, will obey traffic rules. In places where you say no bike, okay, we can excuse that. They need bike to get to their duty post. They need bike because most of them go back home with their rifles and all of that. So you don't expect them to use that and jump public transport for those who can't afford a car. So it is okay to say, okay, let them go on the bike. But then while you're going on the bike, while you're driving in your car, do you obey traffic rules? Of course, the answer is no. And like you rightly stated, as long as if you walk around the streets of Nigeria, once we hear another thing that is being grossly violated is the sirens. Once a military personnel, a police van, or any of these armed forces is passing, the siren that comes from the vehicles just makes everybody wants to run off the road. Mm-hmm. And then apart from the sirens, you find the crazy ones, the knockhead ones, bringing out koboko and different kinds of sizes of whips and all of those things just to whip people across the road. You're driving. Another person is also driving. And you're extending your hand to wipe somebody inside a vehicle without possibly thinking that that wipe could lead to that person, losing control of the steering. And that will lead to an accident. That will lead to people dying. That will lead to family losing loved ones. So beyond the military actually issuing out a directive to go on an awareness campaign, it is more or less, it is most important for the military to have an internal check and balance to ensure that it drums the consciousness of obeying traffic rules to its personnel, not just the military, all the armed forces. Because most times, they say Nigerians don't obey traffic rules. Where are we learning it from?
Because that's the question I was going to come to. When we see, military officers being brutal, even whilst they're using the roads that other Nigerians are using, my question is, where do you see, in other climes, other saner climes, where do you see the military, or the armed forces acting in this way, trying to use the road with other citizens, and then they're whipping out, lashes like he said? Where do we really see these things? So in what part of the training of the Nigerian military did they tell them that that was okay? Because I think especially when it comes to the Nigerian army, there's something that makes them feel larger than life, whether it's the uniform, the rifle, or their training. Just like after God and the air that we breathe, they are the next people. So it looks like no one can literally call them to order. And like the big question you're saying, these statements by the spokesperson for the Nigerian army, Wachiko, at this time, is it something to just appease the very obvious disgruntled Nigerians with regards to this? And it looks like, for the longest time, especially like in Lagos State now, there's been, a long-running conflict between LASMA and, the Nigerian army in Lagos State. So it's more like an investigation needs to be done to ascertain what exactly the issue is. There's also a reported video of a LASMA agent bringing out a Nigerian army, personnel from the front of a commercial bus and beating, the personnel of the Nigerian army. So it looks like there is a conflict that is going on there. Sometimes some of these things may be like rebuttals, for something that has happened elsewhere to one of their people, and they see one of them who is unarmed and is not in the strength of the company or the rank, and then they decide to abuse you. But this really needs to be handled before it gets out of sort. And like he said, let's go beyond just talking about this. Let us make sure that when this meeting and campaign is held, how do we even now have to start looking at elderly people who are obviously educated to a very large extent to have a simple conversation? We are looking at, very soon we are going to vote monies aside to have that campaign to educate members of the Nigerian Armed Forces that, please, when you see the red light on traffic, it means stop. When you see the green light, it means get ready. Why do we need to now have a whole campaign around that? But since it has gotten to that point at this time, please let the Nigerian army go ahead, let the Nigerian police force go ahead. And Egbetakuna said he was going to work in liaison with the Federal Road Safety Corps to make sure that members of the Nigerian police force obey traffic rules. And whatever that other rivalry is also that goes on between their ranks, a police officer doesn't want to use his eye and see Nigerian army and vice versa. The president has said going forward, he wants the Nigerian armed forces to work as a unified body so that we can achieve more with regards to national security and the likes. So there's just a lot to look at this time. Let's see how we can go beyond just giving these orders and making sure that it is implemented and followed to the latter. And let LASMA officials in Lagos State and any other place that has, such security agencies to work with the leadership of the Nigerian army. Let us, settle whatever the scores are this, at this time.
Well, we do hope that the leadership of the armed forces get to understand that the primary assignment they were given is to protect lives and properties, not to destroy lives and properties. The primary reason why they're being paid, why they're in the uniforms they are in, why they have the rifles they have, is to actually take care of the Nigerian society. And like you said, outside the shores of Nigeria, I've had people in the US Marine, I've had people outside the shores of Nigeria who are in different military, organizations, but you never see them. Even when they travel down to Nigeria, sometimes get harassed by the Nigerian police, who truly doesn't even understand who these persons are. The way they react to issues shows you a difference between a well-trained military officer who knows that violence is not the first thing to react. basically by your training, you know you're better placed than the next person. And of course, by extending violence, you violate the ethics and all the training that you've been given. We do hope they get to listen and take a cue from, other members of the armed forces outside the shores of Nigeria. And of course, we also know that the Nigerian army have well trained, and of course all our security forces. So it's a matter of urgency for them to go back to the rule book of their training and then use that in their daily engagement with Nigerians. But moving away from that, Abdullahi Ganduje of the All Progressive Congress, APC national chairman, has tasked state governors and their deputies to maintain a cordial relationship towards strengthening democracy in Nigeria. Now, Ganduje, who is a former governor of Kano State, said he received members of the former APC Deputy Governors Forum in Abuja yesterday. He said that being a deputy governor in Nigeria was most difficult because of sycophants who tried to create confusion and rift between governors and their deputies. Although the deputy governor may be regarded as spare tires, they were always needed in times of troubles in state. Now, I love the word spare tires because that's one word that was very much used in the week hours of the general elections, particularly here in Akwa Ibom State. We saw some of the deputy governors and designators at then calling themselves spare tires. And the conversation was, how about we get to a point where we have the role of the deputy governors stipulated within the constitutions of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because oftentimes we've had conversations about the fact that deputy governors are literally existing at the mercies of the governors. If the governor doesn't allow you to breed, you're not going to breed. So the question now arises, to what extent can these people actually contribute to whatever vision the man at the helm of affairs is bringing to bear, and how efficient and effective is this position? If we cannot make this position actually functioning, can we now think of erasing them and just know that we have a governor and there is nobody attached to the governor, so it's just the governor doing his thing, instead of having a joint ticket and then one person is standing tall and the next person is not really standing tall?
I think part of the big issues here is the fact that the office of the deputy governor is like one of the most controversial positions in the country, because sometimes you see them literally being paid no respect, as it were. Some people don't really even understand what their portfolio is in government, and we've continued to see different kinds of dispute. And I know that particularly this move right now by Ganduje, of course, Ganduje is looking to host a deputy governors conference where they can host all deputy governors in the country. Let's have a conversation and give an agenda to that particular office and see how some of these strife between state governors and deputies can end. Remember that there is an ongoing, war, so to speak, between Obaseki and his, deputy in Edo State. It's the fight is from one leg to the other. Different things are being thrown up. There was a move by Obaseki to impeach, the deputy governor, and then, I think there was a court injunction that said he should not do so. So there's been, some rift here and there. Now, the APC national chairman is saying we need to gather together. Of course, this happened during the meeting of, ex-APC deputy governors themselves, but now they're also looking to gather current sitting deputy governors to see how this conversation can be had to decide what the problem is and look for a way to foster some solutions. So they're looking to organize a national conference on the relationship between governors and their deputies. He also said it's important not to dwell on governors and their deputies. They'll also look at the president and vice president, considering what happened between former President Olusegun Obasanjo and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. We knew that was one, relationship that did not quite go well. Even after their tenure, they didn't still, seem to see eye to eye. So there's been a lot of rivalry and all of that. And I think constitutionally, we should also look for a way to incorporate proper portfolios for offices that have been instituted in government, so that people don't, and then that whole, because I think Andrew even piggyback on that whole essence of calling deputy governors spare tires. But even those of us who drive and own cars, you understand that the place of the spare tire cannot even be overemphasized. What happens to you when you get on a long journey and something happens to your tires? Like Gandhi J said, if you do not take care of the relationship between yourself as a state governor and the deputy, when you will need that, spare tire, you will find yourself coming up short, and then you will know that they were important. It just feels like your pinky finger, and you just feel like this is not so important, so we'll do whatever we say, please, until something happens to it. You find out that the other four can't work.
Well, it's funny, the things that happen, and we do hope that this conversation is not just something within the APC family, but that we also have, the conversation going past APC to all the parties in Nigeria, to all the serving deputy governors, so we could have the generality of deputy governors across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT actually converging to set the right agenda for the office of the deputy governor. Aside from the fact that they are literally not given the opportunity to also contribute to the advancement of their respective state, it poses a lot of challenge, because most times people literally think that the deputy governor is more or less like a figure that is just picked and dropped and used only when needed. And of course, there is also this question of lack of trust and confidence, and a little bit of maybe inferiority complex, as many would call it, on the part of some of state governors who feel if they give their deputies the opportunity, they might outshine them and outperform them. And of course, we also have it at the national level, where the presidency or the president might feel, if I give the vice president the opportunity, he might outperform me. Remember what happened when the outgone administration, President Muhammadu Buhari, as a then was out of the country, and for the first time, after severally refusing to hand over power to Professor Osibanjo, Professor Yemi Osibanjo. And then, of course, we saw the performances that came from Osibanjo, and shortly after that, we never heard Osibanjo, we never saw him. Nothing was heard about him again after Buhari returned to the country. So these are concerns that we need. Our politicians need to come to a point of being able to tap from the brains of everybody around them, being able to allow everyone around them contribute their quota. America, all the big countries of the world are not where they are today because they refuse to tap from the talents of people around them. So the thing that is being done to the Nigerian youths, the thing that, all of the politics, all of the drama unfolding is just still happening within the ranks and files of government. Like, literally, I read an article yesterday from the iconic Michael Bush, and talking about, when you meet politicians, and something struck my interest when he said in that article that, most politicians dread excellence. They rather settle for mediocres. They rather settle for people who will not be able to perform. So if you're an excellent achiever within the political sphere, everybody looks at you as a threat. If you're somebody who values excellence, everybody sees you as the one person who wants to make them look like they don't know what they're doing to the public eyes. So we need to get to that point where politicians do not fear, but rather strive for excellence. Because when you strive for excellence, you're not going to be afraid of the next person. Rather, you're going to see the next person who's also striving for excellence as a competition. And that healthy competition is going to bring about ideas, a collection of ideas that will actually better the lots of Nigerians.
Well, that's is a serious issue. Let's see what DJ can do. And we do hope that that deputy governor's conference cuts across all party lines at this time. But let's move on from there. Something that Francis tried to throw up at the beginning of Rise and Shine this morning, the proposed indefinite strike by the Nigerian Labour Congress. Of course, they are threatening to go on an indefinite strike if nothing is done to make sure that the price of the fuel pump price does not go up from the current 620, 650 that it is selling at to about 700, 720. Now, the Nigerian Labour Congress is saying that its members will commence a nationwide strike without any formal notice if marketers increase the pump price of petrol without concluding the ongoing negotiations. Of course, remember that there's been several negotiations on the table. Part of why the protest did not go beyond the 2nd of August was because the NLC and the TUC leadership had a meeting with the president, and we're very sure that promises were made, negotiations were made, but so far so good. What are the differences that we have been given? The timeline for the even like the likes of the palliatives that were to be seen, we've begun to hear less and less about those palliative conversations as we stand, in the country. But the NLC president Joe Ajero admonished the federal government to stop the falling value of the naira, which is part of the biggest problems with regards to why marketers have come out to say that fuel prices may go up. They can no longer, buy fuel at the prices they usually would buy. And the Naira is selling heavily against the dollar, and it's making it very impossible for them to be able to buy commodity into the country. And so some of them, instead of taking monies to buy the fuel and bring it in expensive, are even stalling on importing fuel into the country at this time. We see the fact that the cost of premium merchant spirit at this time is at 680 naira per liter thereabout, but in the coming weeks we stand on the scale line of 720 should the dollar continue to trade between 910 and 950 naira at the parallel market. So this is a very serious problem. The marketers are said dealers seeking to import petrol are being forced to put the plans on hold due to the scarcity of foreign exchange to import the commodity. So we are looking at not just fuel is not just the primary problem here. We are also seeing the effect of the naira on these trade transactions.
Well, definitely that is expected. Just yesterday, having conversations with somebody who does, the fuel business, I recall that just after the removal of fuel subsidy, the prices of importation, or the lifting cost and the landing costs changed drastically. Now, as from the conversations we had yesterday, compared to 2 weeks ago, looking at the dollar naira disparity right now, it's expected that an average of 1.5 to 1.6 million naira will be added to the last lifting cost for petroleum marketers. Now, if you add 1 point something million naira to what had already been existing, so persons who used to lift a product for, say, 10 million naira will now lift at 11 point something million naira, and definitely that would, have its adverse effect on the prices for per liter of the pump price of these respective products, whether it's diesel or petrol or kerosene, regardless. Now, the questions right now to the Nigerian leadership, the Nigerian government, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the leadership of the Central Bank of Nigeria is, you had said dollars is going to be sold through the banks. How is it that importers are not getting the desired dollars, the needed dollars to actually be able to, import into the country? How is it that people who actually need this money are still finding it difficult? It's literally like what we saw during the Naira scarcity, where banks were being accused of hoarding the Naira, new Naira note and selling it to POS attendants. So it seems, regardless of the issue, we're having the CBN still not being able to monitor the compliance level of the respective financial institutions to ensure that these dollars are given to people who actually are in need of it, are given to people who actually will bring in benefits to the Nigerian society. So it's almost beautiful, always beautiful for the Nigerian government, for the leadership of the country to reel out very lofty ideas, very beautiful policies. But the problem of implementation has always been the issue. And without implementation, all of the lofty ideas, all of the amazing policies put forward by any administration will amount to nothing. Because we know this is Nigeria, and like every other society, there are persons who are more interested in what comes into their pocket. People who do not care what happens to the next person as long as they are making profit. So it comes down to the willpower on the part of the minders of the system to ensure that these policies are monitored, implementations are done, and compliance level is strictly monitored so that we can have the resultant effect. Otherwise, we'll still be going back and forth with the same scenario.
Of course, this is expected if we don't do the things that we must. We hear that the banks are meant to sell dollar at about 740. They're supposed to be able to buy about $740 per liter at this time. But we are finding out that these monies have remained illiquid and unable. The banks have been unable to provide this. There's also allegations that some banks, are in cahoot with some other agencies and selling at a particular fund, therefore making making out an artificial scarcity of the dollar also. So there's a lot of I think one of the things that mars the Nigerian system very greatly is corruption and greed of the minders of our system. And the sooner we looked into these issues, the better for us, because why would just a particular sect of people hold an entire nation to ransom? It was Simi, the musician, who was asking yesterday how people are surviving in this country, because prices of transportation, of food, of everything has skyrocketed at this time. When you take it to 700 and 720, where do you want vulnerable Nigerians to enter? Even people who earn a living, it's even difficult at this time, because you realize that the money that you used to take to be able to cater for your family within 2 weeks and wait again for your salary to come, for those who are just salary earners, it's not even taking you beyond a week. And we seem not to be seeing the federal government do as much. It was President Bola Ahmed Tinubu who brought this shake into the country on May 29. Which, Nigerians are hoping that at this time, 2 months in, he should have been able to find a concrete way to help Nigerians to, navigate the season. Like I said earlier, conversations of palliatives have slowed down. We said $500 million dollars had been borrowed, 8,000 were to be shared. Yeah, no, there's 500 and there was 800. 800 was under Muhammadu Buhari's regime. The conversation that has been had under Tinubu-led administration has been about $500 million. Okay, you brought it. Most civil society organizations and most people in the country were saying sharing 8,000 naira is miserly. It will not help, to any extent. Okay, if the federal government led by Tinubu said we want to revisit that, of which they said they were not, going to. If they said they want to revisit it and look at another way of mitigating the the issue in the country, why haven't we had it? We really don't think that it should take this long to be able to bring out ventures that will cushion the effect. There's been lots of people writing the presidency and fostering solutions that could help Nigerians to mitigate the season. Why not take this report, looking on it, read up on them, and find the best possible solutions to apply at this time? It's just a lot. The federal government, NLC, is saying that in the next couple of days, if nothing is done, we're going to be experiencing an indefinite strike. We cannot even talk about how that is going to further impact on the economy of the nation, which is absolutely dwindling. Thank God I didn't even forget. I was reading something yesterday and we saw the fact that inflation in the United States is beginning to drop. And when you say that inflation is dropping in the country, it means the economy is stabilizing. People are able to do things and see the worth of their money. So it means that other, developed worlds, other nations of the world are finding ways to stabilize their economy. It's such great news if you hear that the inflation of your country is dropping. Everyone will be able to sigh, heave a sigh of relief. But where are we headed as a country right now with all of this?
Well, where we headed, we are heading in the era of hope as far as President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is concerned, and we do hope that Nigerians don't get to die before the era of hope actually, becomes a living reality for the generality of Nigerians. But then, moving away from, the inflation and all that is happening in Nigeria, while we're still expecting hope and talking about the palliative, just to chip in there, I think the last thing I heard about palliative was the Akwa Ibom State governor saying about 3,000 bags of rice has been received from the federal government or thereabout. I stand corrected on the numbers though, but some bags of rice have been received as palliative from the federal government to Akwa Ibom, and a committee was set up to help in the distribution of those bags of rice to the vulnerable, the poorest of the poor. And then part of the conversations we've continued to have has been how much can this bag of rice do? How many families will benefit? Now, if you're giving somebody a bag of rice, for instance, which is not possible.
And you know nobody's going to see a bag of rice.
Of course, not at all. Now, you're giving a costed, rubber of rice to a family. How long will that take?
You do even say that right now.
No, I'm just using it as an instance.
Yeah, I get you.
How long
I'm
would that
doing a quick
last?
math in my head and it's alarming.
So how long would that last? And then you're talking about just rice. There is nothing else attached to it. So are they going to chew the rice? You just scoop the rice and chew, and that's palliative from the government of the day. That's palliative from the government of the land. In a country that is so blessed that we can literally take care of our needs without having to go borrow. But because the minders of the system are not deliberate and intentional, they are not vision-driven enough to look at issues and address them, attack them head-on, and solve the problems of the country, we are where we are today. The renewed hope, the hope agenda of the present administration is just something that a lot of Nigerians are still, looking at it in akimbo, sitting by the fence is just watching to see how it's going to unfold. But in the past 2 months of this administration, Nigerians have had it difficult, and there are expectations that if Ahmed Bola Tinubu did actually prepare for the role as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as he has said on several occasions, it's about time we get to see the results of that. But moving away from the palliative and, of course, issues surrounding it. So we saw the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, told magistrate yesterday to behave well, to preserve the integrity and respect for the independence of the judiciary. Now, he gave the charge while advising against unnecessary delay in the dispensation of justice. A CJN said the essence of justice is to achieve it swiftly and fairly. The duration must be intricately balanced with the outcome such that delay is not occasioned and the integrity of the outcome is not compromised. Now, two things attracts my attention: delay and compromise. Now, most times, one of the reasons people in Nigeria don't even think of going before the law court is because of the way our justice system is. You take a case before a court and it will take you years before that case gets decided upon. And when you look at how much you're going to have to pay lawyers for every appearance fee, and you calculate that for the number of months, the number of years, most people just say, you know what, just let it go. So beyond the CJN actually talking about, speedy cases or ensuring that justice is served rightly, we'll actually love to see the institutions being set up to actualize this, because we've had conversations of the judges, the courts not having enough personnel, of judges not being readily available, and all of those conversations. Now, if we have to get justice done, it means we need manpower. It means we need the system to work. It means we need all the hands that we can have within the judiciary to actually function effectively. Now, let's even look at prisons. The last time I took a visit to the prison, I wept bitterly, because you find persons who were picked up on the street for just no reason being, lavishing away in prison custody. You find people whose cases could have been decided upon years ago, spending years in prison because their case is still pending. There's been no verdict by a court of competent jurisdiction where their cases are being tried. And then you ask, why are these cases not being tried? These are cases that should have just been, trashed as it comes. But people are spending 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years in prison.
Still awaiting trial.
They have not even been given, the verdict has not been given, still awaiting trial.
Well, there's a lot to look out for at this time. I know that one of the mantras that has been trailing the media, and especially the social media at this time, is, all eyes on the judiciary. There's that hashtag that has been trending, especially because in the last couple of weeks, running into maybe a month, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal has been sitting, and there's been, several other cases in the courts that Nigerians are expecting to hear what the judiciary is going to say. I know, glossing over an article, I think early this morning or yesterday thereabout, there was more like, everyone should buckle their seatbelts as the PEPT is about to give, some shocking revelations. We don't even know what that means. But at this point, to see Justice Olukayode Ariwola call out on the jury system to make sure that they get their work done, it's very imperative. I think it was the governor of Kwara State, if I'm not mistaken, but there's one of the state governments that has given a deadline to, the courts in its states to make sure that all the outstanding cases have been cleared before a certain date. And I think this is like the second time that Justice Ariwola is saying this particular thing since he became the lead man at the helms of affairs for the NBA. We are looking at how cases should be, tried and looked into as they appear, just to, avoid lumping cases in the law courts and it's taking longer than necessary. Let all hands be on deck. Let an issue that can be trashed out within weeks be tried out. So maybe we're also going to be looking at revolutionizing, the constitution as to how cases should be handled in the country. And we are looking at delay. We're also looking at making sure that the integrity of the judicial system is upheld by, its personnel. And that is very, very important at this time. Nigeria is, standing on a very, literally standing on an edge. So it's better that the judiciary helps us to stabilize the country with, in-depth investigations, in-depth trial of cases. And when we say justice, justice should be justice. They say that the woman of the law is blind, she sees no one, and holds a balance. So this is what the NBA boss is at this time asking of the jury, and we do hope that we see beyond conversations implementations of some of these things.
Well, I'll always say the question is not always, the press briefing, the admonitions, the advice, and the counseling. And that, of course, oftentimes will be very interesting to the ears and very, well crafted. The problem has always been with the implementation. And once we get implementation right, then we must have been able to solve one of Nigeria's biggest problems. But we'll take a short pause here and head out to Mary Joseph, who's standing by to take us around with the latest happening on the news brief. When we do come back, Rise and Shine will continue. Just stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses into counting.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses into counting.
Hello and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with a report that two siblings, Samuel and Samson Ogoshi, have been extradited to the United States to face trial for allegedly running a global sexual extortion operation leading to the death of a teenager U.S. citizen, Jonan DeMay. The extradition of the two siblings followed a judgment by Justice Bina Nyako of the Federal High Court that reports say the Solicitor General of the Federation signed the final surrender order authorizing the U.S. to bring the Ogoshis, who are 22 and 20 years old, to West Michigan, U.S. To the judiciary now, where the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwo, alerted magistrates on Monday to behave well to preserve the integrity and respect for the independence of the judiciary. The CJN, who is also the board chairman of the Board of Governors of the National Judicial Institute, stated this in his keynote address delivered in Abuja during the opening ceremony of the 2023 induction course for 100 newly appointed magistrates. Away from that, the Nigerian Labour Congress on Monday warned that its members will commence a nationwide strike without any formal notice if marketers increase the pump price of petrol without including the ongoing negotiations. The NLC President Joe Ajaero admonished the federal government to stop the falling value of the naira. The threats by the organized labor followed hints by all marketers on Sunday that the cost of premium motor spirits, popularly called petrol, would rise to between 680 naira per litre and 720 naira per litre in the coming weeks, should the dollar continue to trade between 910 naira and 950 naira at the parallel markets. We head straight to the African scene now, where the United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has underscored the importance of pressure in ensuring that the Niger junta releases President Mohamed Bazoum, who has been held in his residence since he was ousted by the military on July 26. He commended the leadership of the chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, President Bola Tinubu, for the decision taken to reinstate the toppled Nigerian leader. We quickly head straight to sports, where Montpellier striker Akon Adams has led a marker in the French League One by becoming the first player to score 2 goals in his first Ligue 1 game, as well as recording the fastest brace in the French top flight. Recall that following the move from Norwegian side Lillestrøm last week, the Nigerian was handed his first appearance in League One by coach Michel De Zakarian as they faced Le Havre at Stade de la Mosselin on Sunday. The former Flying Eagle striker rewarded his coach with 2 quick goals as they were held 2-2 by the visitors. We'll have details of this and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Chat, where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. To have a wonderful morning.
Government. Secretary General,
This was the Lagos Nigerian for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses into counting.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president, as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding you, your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyeken on Connect every every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories on how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Glad to welcome you back. Still Rise and Shine, and of course we're coming to you live from the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. And of course this morning, Talking Nigeria, we started off with the very sorry scenario that played out in Lagos State between the officials of LASMA and the Nigerian military, where a LASMA official was brutally assaulted, and of course raising very big question on the professional ethics and competency of the men of the Nigerian military, particularly those involved in this act. You know that the military has also come out to say they were going to issue a directive and embark on awareness to caution its personnel to ensure obedience and strict adherence to traffic rules. From there we move over to the question of the NLC planning to go on a nationwide protest in the event that the government of the day is not able to address some of the concerns raised, particularly the ones bordering on the planned increment of petroleum pump price again to about 720 naira. We see that the NLC have also advised the federal government to normalize the disparity between the dollar and the naira that is causing the challenges that we've seen. Most marketers who were supposed to be importing fuel have decided to stay action because of the challenges they are facing We also talked about the loggerheads between, the APC family, and of course the question of the role of deputy governors in Nigeria. The APC leadership is trying to foster an agenda of setting a new order for deputy governors and vice president, which of course their role has been more or less of a figurehead. We also talk about the Nigerian justice system, where Justice Riwola has spoken to magistrates in Nigeria to ensure that a speedy completion of cases and ensure that justice is served swiftly. He's also talked to them about the need to not compromise within the legal system, and these are concerns that Nigerians have been expecting. But right about now, we'd like to talk about another issue that has been, a recurrent. Recall that just within the course of the 2023 2023 football tournament, where our women actually did excellently well, even though they crashed out at the almost at the climax of the competition. We saw the First Lady of Nigeria, Excellency Senator Tinubu's wife, actually welcoming the Nigerian delegation that went for that tournament and commending them for the great strides that they have done in putting Nigeria on the forefront of the global space. And one of the comments that Remi Tinubu did made yesterday was that the giant stride and the achievements made so far by the women of the Nigerian football team has been a source of inspiration to a lot of young women who look up to them as mentors at this point. She also went further to say that in as much as they may not have won, the competition, but heading to where they actually got to is a strong indication of how prepared they were for the tournament. Just feeling the pulse of the female players, we heard that Remi Tinubu, the wife of the president, actually did reach out to them before they left Nigeria for the tournament. So now she's also welcoming them back. And on the heels of that, we saw the leadership of the Nigerian Football Federation claiming that all the entitlement of the Nigerian players will be paid once the money from the World Cup is received.
It's good to see that, first of all, the First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, is carving a niche for herself within the government of, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, staying relevant with conversations that are necessary. As the First Lady, receiving and welcoming the Super Falcons at Ase Villa yesterday to tell them thank you and congratulations for the journey you could take in the FIFA, Women's World Cup was very, very commendable. Of course, it was also an avenue for her to be able to listen to the plight of members of the Super Falcons, especially when we have conversations bordering on their welfare, payment of events that they go to attend and all of those things. So those are some of the things that we put on the table in that conversation. I know that upon being taken out of the World Cup, one of them had raised an alarm that part of the reasons why they didn't do so well at the World Cup was the fact that they did not get the very strong backing of the NFF in the country. Now, that stems into whether it's welfare or, several other issues. Of course, we had the NFF coming out to say that wasn't, the case. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the leadership of the NFF, the Super Falcons, and everyone who is involved in the sporting sector are together. They are on the same page so that we are able to foster more successes than we have been able to do so far, within the sector. But seeing the First Lady, Oluremi Tinubu, seize this opportunity to have, a time out with the girls, I'm very sure that it was something that, they absolutely enjoyed and appreciated. It will give more like an ambience of we see you, and we see what you're doing. And I mean, being the First Lady, she's the first of all the ladies in the country, and who better to host the Super Falcons at this time? And of course, the First Lady who held a similar meeting with the victorious Nigeria female basketball team, the Tigresses, past Monday, has since been encouraging Nigerian female sports personalities by urging them on and holding meetings like this. So we see that, she's staying relevant, finding, her niche in these sectors. Conversing with different females in the sporting sector. She did it with the female basketballers, the Tigresses, and then has come on to the Super Falcons. It's very, very imperative. Now, we do not even know how these kinds of meetings will impact on the psyche of the players when they, go on to other competitions. They will know that they have the backing, they are being seen by the First Lady, and that to a very large extent could have gross impact on the sporting activities within the sector.
Definitely, as much as Nigerians can be hilarious sometimes, if we have to trace down to what happened during the Buhari's administration when Nigerian lost, and Nigerians put it on the fact that the president actually did place a call to the national team. But then, one thing that cannot be taken away is the fact that when people who are trusted with leadership roles reach out to the people who they are leading, it has a way of boosting the morale. It's some kind of a field that allows the people to know that yes, whatever sacrifices you're making, it is not just you that is making the sacrifice, but the sacrifice is in the interest of the people, and that sacrifice is being noticed, is being appreciated, is being acknowledged. And nothing fans the embers of success than knowing that somewhere down the line there is someone who has the authority, someone who should actually be concerned, who is really doing the job of being concerned about what you're doing. I watched a video yesterday of a father in a hospital bed who had to, coach the daughter through a relay race. At the start of the race, the coach just came and told the young lady, look, I'm not going to be the one coaching you today, and then handed over a communicator, and just told her, once you start the race, just press play. So the young lady pressed play, and then, long story short, you find that the father was coaching the girl all through. Now, when somebody within the team asked her, are you not the one coaching her today? She said, no, somebody else is doing the coaching. And then the father took the girl from the starting point, told her what to respect, at the point she needs to overtake the next person, gradually to the point where he now had to say, okay, you know what? A lot of people are burning out at this point in time, but not you. And you know why? Because I'm here with you and we're doing this together. I appreciate the efforts you've put so far. That could not have been any better to inspire that lady to the success that she actually was. So finding the First Lady, who is the image of women in Nigeria, being able to reach out, relate with these women who are, representing us at the global stage, is something that we cannot measure how much of an impact that meeting has done. And we do hope that the leadership of the Nigerian football would actually honor their terms by ensuring that these women are paid all of their entitlements, because these kinds of scenarios are why within the sports sector we had conversation where we have Nigerian talent leaving to play for other countries of the world because we are not taking proper care of them. We've had enough brain drain within the other sectors, the health sector, other sectors of the economy. We should not get to a point where we have the one thing that is always a national unifier also being taken away.
Well, it's very imperative that that is done. Congratulations to the Super Falcons. Like most, sports enthusiasts to say, the Super Falcons did put in good energy in that very last match. Of course, they lost on grounds of penalties. They had put in a fight, and it might have turned out differently if they were able to score a goal during the normal time. But they did well, and we congratulate them nonetheless. And well done to you, the First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu. But let's move on from that particular conversation. And I think that this is raising a really serious concern for citizens and maybe civil society organizations, but for stakeholders to begin to look into how employment are being done within the public sector. What are the rules and regulations? I know that there are some agencies in the country that have received guidelines not to advertise for employment, and that is how those parastatals have been running. But now we see that JAM is coming under fire as the House of Reps is querying them over lopsided employment from 2015 to 2023, and that a different guidelines and things that they're looking into. First of all, JAM had been given a guideline to make sure that anytime employments are going to be done, they must be advertised. But it looks like from between 2015 to 2023, employments have been done in JAM that didn't see advertisement being done. Number two, the guideline also says not more than 100 persons should be employed by JAM annually. To what extent did JAM overshoot those numbers within these years? These are some of the things that the House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating employment racketeering by ministries, departments, and agencies, and also mismanagement of integrated payroll and personal information system (IPPIS) is looking at, of course, that to query the registrar of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board (JAM) over what is described as lopsided employment in the agency. So this is a really serious issue now. The House of Assembly, the House of Reps, ad hoc committee is putting down their eyes in looking into, job racketeering amongst MDAs, ministries and agencies. I think that is a good one. First of all, we are going to be able to harvest out ghost workers out of the system, and let's take back those monies that are being paid to, unseen persons. Maybe even top it on the ones that are working. I think to a very large extent this will have an impact. But looking holistically at the fact that employments are done in certain public agencies where their guidelines of employment is different, and yet they are not observing it, where is this going to lead us as a country at this time? We keep churning out fresh graduates in droves every year, but yet there are no job openings within even the public sector. When we go beyond this, within the sphere of job racketeering, we also see these persons know that JAM, for instance, is opening up employment, but then it's only going to be their friends and family who find out. So you find out that people have stoked their generations in all of these offices, and other Nigerians are not even getting to enjoy the benefits or minimal job availability made in the country.
Well, as far as Nigeria is concerned, until we set our institutions right, until we strengthen the guidelines that we have, until we have people who lead us and have the political will to lead by example, we are not going to see any changes happening within the government establishment. Job racketeering has been a consistent thing. It's literally like everybody who finds their way into offices would find one way or the other to maintain the lineage. Is more or less like an inheritance for most people. You find that within the political space, you find a father who is a serving governor, you find the son who is a serving House of Rep member, you find a daughter who is at the Senate. One family producing 3 strong positions in a state. And then you ask, is it only this family that is there in the entirety of that community? Don't we have other competent hands within that community to also occupy this position or vie for this position? So if we're finding it within the political space, it's also the same system that is being brought into the government agencies. If I'm the director, I'm going to find a way within the government quarters to bring my son in to be the next person in charge. So that by the time I'm moving towards retiring, my son is already also at almost close to being a director in the ministry. So we need to get to a point where as much as possible, the influence of people in position of power and authority is drastically reduced. The issue of slotting jobs out within government coffers is reduced to the barest minimum. The issue of not making jobs meant for Nigerians basically open to everybody to come in and then compete favorably should be. And of course, we should also look at the scenario where if we are going to have employment, have people outside the ministries who are doing the recruitment come in to do the interview. Maybe contract the interview out to people who knows nobody. And probably when you're constituting this panel of judges or this team who are going to conduct the interview, let nobody within the ranks and files of that ministry know who these persons are. Let everybody just wake up on that day, sit down and see.
And so that people can get jobs
so
on
people
merit.
can get jobs on merit. Until we get to that point, the question of job racketeering is not going to stop. The question of having the same lineages of people, generations of one family, occupy the top places in government is never going to stop.
We're also looking at the fact that one of the major issues with regards to job racketeering is the concept of waivers that was provided to some of these some of these agencies. So that whole concept has given a leeway to fraud to take place, and this is what the ad hoc committee is saying that they are going to check, because you've been given certain waivers to do certain things in certain ways. They just go ahead and lump the entire process together. Now the ad hoc committee is asking questions around advertising. Why wouldn't you advertise for these jobs, and what makes you think that you do not have the capacity, like you rightly said, to be able to interview and shortlist the people that are necessary, so that we are also careful to bring together a pool of people who have the expertise for the job roles that they're being employed to do, so that the public sector does not become a dump site for people who do not have anything to offer to the system. Public sector workforce contributes grossly to the development of our country. They are contributing to the economic empowerment that we have. If we have people who do not know how to get the jobs done, then we are fighting against ourselves as a system. What's the guarantee that when you grant a waiver to your family member or a friend of yours, you're going to be looking out for people who can actually get the job done? So these are myriad of questions, but like we said earlier, the House of Reps is seems to be sitting down squarely on looking out and picketing on job racketeering at this time, and we do hope that it's going to bring some form of stability to the public sector. And Francis, part of my concerns would be that this is not only done on certain levels of workforce membership in the public sector. What I mean by that is that I hope this sweeps from the permanent secretary level up to the least person. Let's be able to check the rank and files to be sure that we are following all the guidelines for how jobs should be gotten within this sector, so that we can move the country forward.
Definitely, we do hope we get to that point where leaders exercise the willpower needed to transform our institutions. What we have basically in Nigeria are strong individuals who exert their forces, their powers and authorities. But when we get to having strong institutions with set guidelines, set rules, well-organized system of doing things, we will get to a point where we'll not be talking about job racketeering or people being able to holistically just handpick people into positions within the government coffers. But this is where we'll take a short pause and go on a short timeout. When we do come back, rise and shine. We'll continue. Stay with us.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is still Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran, which is somewhere in Akwa Ibom State. You need to be here to see the scenery where we bring you beautiful broadcasting. Of course, we talked about the fact that we'd love for you to follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find at Spectrum Television. .ng, and also the fact that Rise and Shine is reaching out to you to come partner with us. If you love what we do on Rise and Shine, you love the quality of conversation, you love the quality of broadcasting, this is Rise and Shine, myself and Francis and the rest of the crew calling out for you to come partner with us. Different segments on the show you can take on and partner. Let's do business and let's take fine broadcasting across Africa. But of course, at this point, we'll be looking at our newspapers, daily spotlight, what's making the rounds on the front pages of our Nigerian dailies, and also would like for you to, freely make your contributions on some of these issues this morning. Taking a quick swipe at the front pages of our national dailies this morning, would start with the Nation newspaper. Of course, financial crisis, part of the big issues that we are seeing. The Nation big story there says Forex crisis. CBN likely to flood market with dollar. We also see here Tinubu OK's Apex Bank's plans to stabilize currency volatility. How to strengthen Naira by experts. CBN hammers to fall on speculators. Okay. Of course, part of the problems that we've seen in the sector has been several speculations from different sides at this point. So CBN is saying they intend to hammer, on these speculators. Now, but when we also hear that CBN is planning to flood the market with dollar, is this also a very, very well advised and thought through angle to handle the issue of the naira versus the dollar at this time? First of all, they floated the naira and we have seen the effect. Will flooding the markets with the dollar have a better effect on all the economic realities we have on ground? Well, moving on from that particular story on the front page of the Nation, Otudeco or $10 feud at center of FBN AGM. Page 5 is where you can find details. NEMA warns of flooding in Lagos, Ogun, Ondo, and 16 other states. Page 3 is where you can find the details. Marketers put petrol ex depot price at 600 naira. Akeredolu's wife hopeful governor will return soon. You can find details of those stories on pages 7 and 8. First Lady hails Super Falcons for a superlative World Cup performance. Page 31 is where we can find the details. Okay, there's a quotation here by the CBN that says, "We do not believe that the changes going on in the parallel market are driven by pure economic demand and supply, but are topped by speculative demand from people." Okay. We also see here U.S. presses ECOWAS to pile more pressure on Niger junta. No to Bazoum trial. Akinyemi endorses actions. Of course, most stories there. Air Force probes helicopter shot down, claimed by bandits. Of course, there's a story there of the air crash that happened being claimed by bandits. Kaduna bound M1171 chopper crashes near Zungeru. Okay, the last story here on the front page of the Nation says customs intercept ammunition stacked in 20 sacks in Ogun. Page 28 is where we can find details of that particular story. We move next to the Punch newspaper. Front page of the Punch, Naira slump. CBN clamps down on speculators, restricts diaspora remittances. Acting CBN governor meets Tinubu, predicts heavy losses for forex speculators. Federal government records zero oil earning in 7 months. Naira crisis may worsen. Niger, US backs ECOWAS, demands more pressure on junta. Page 2. Bandits allegedly down NAV helicopter, kill 13 soldiers. Page 8 is where we can find details. NLC protest proposed fuel price hike threatens fresh strike. Page 2 is where you can find details of that story. Ogun, Kebbi Customs seize ammunition, petrol, foreign rise. Details are on pages 4 and 5. Diesel price hits 915 naira per litre. Manufacturers fear job losses. Page 20 is where we can find details. We also see here federal government extradites siblings to US for sexual extortion trial. Page 7 is where you can find details. Oshun invokes no work, no pay for striking poly workers. Page 7 is where you can find the details of that particular story. Let's move on and see what the Vanguard is saying this morning. It's economic shutdown if petrol price rises again. We see here accuses IGP, Justice Ministry of hijacking duties of Labour Ministry. Demands apology from IGP for arresting NURTW boss. Says Labour Ministry may go extinct if Tinubu is concerned about economic hardships, says presidency. Marketers urge federal government to tackle forex challenge. Say pump price may rise next week. Very troubling details right there. You can find all of that on page 5. Federal government to revive list moribund government assets on stock exchange. Page 19. Niger coups to prosecute ousted President Bazoum for high treason. 50 bandits, 13 military personnel killed in Niger State encounter. Page 6 is where we can find details. Delta, Ondo, Sokoto, 16 others to experience flooding in August, says NEMA. We also see a picture story of the LASMA agents that was manhandled by men of the Nigerian army yesterday. Naira slide, CBN moves to crack down on speculators. Gani Adams petitions Kwara governor, warns of looming religious war. Page 13 is where the details of that story can be found. Herdsmen kill 2 teachers, injure 2 others in Plateau School. Page 6 is where we can find the details. House of Representatives query jam over lopsided employment. Details are on page 9. Vanguard Sports this morning, Napoli puts massive release clause for Osimhen new deal. Okay, that's all we have on the front page of the Vanguard this morning. And of course, still looking at some of the stories and how they are affecting Nigerians at this time. We move to Nigerian Tribune. Big story there, still on petrol pump price. NLC to commence strike without notice if the government doesn't weigh in at this time. Page 5 is where you can find details on Nigerian Tribune. ECOWAS angered by junta's threat to prosecute Bazoum. Page 8 is where we can find details. Ondo, Delta, Sokoto, of course, still NEMA warning of the impending floods to come this month of August. Soldiers beat LASMA official in Lagos, page 26. Of course, we see the Nigerian army have come out to say that they intend to have some form of education for members of the Nigerian army for them to be able to obey simple traffic rules in the country. Well, we also see here Naira slide, CBN moves to crack down on speculators, promises to improve forex liquidity in coming days. Stop Naira floating, repair local refineries, says expert. Of course, these are some of the alarms that have been raised by professionals within these sectors. Naira slips to 950 Naira per dollar at parallel market. Page 6 is where we can find details of that particular story. 7.5% tax component pushes diesel price up. Page 7. Confusion over nav helicopter crash in Niger State. Page 5 is where you can find the details. And that's all we have on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Of course, it's really troubling at this time to see that literally prices of everything in the country seems to be going up, with 7.5 tax components pushing diesel prices up. We also see how this is going to grossly affect manufacturing and manufacturers in the country. The Daily Times is what we're going to be looking at next. Big story there, of course. NLC is warning of indefinite nationwide strike if petrol price rises again. One more cries have been made by the labor union. Niger junta to slam treason charges on Bazoum. Now helicopter crashes in Niger State. Nigerian siblings extradited to US for sexual financial crimes face a risk of 20 years in jail. State House new permanent secretary assumes office. Page 2 is where we can find details. NLC is demanding an apology from the IGP. Claims police justice ministry usurping labor ministry functions in the country. Daily Trust is our last paper for this morning, and we're looking at what Daily Trust says. Of course, bandits kill many soldiers in Niger. Pilot dies as NAV helicopter crashes. Military mom on attack on personnel. Senator urges deployment of operative to troubled communities. Cleric, wife, children abducted in Kaduna. Pages 4 and 6 is where you can find details of that particular story. We also see here more woes for passengers as NCAA slams fresh suspension on Max Air. CBN moves to rescue Naira, sanctioned banks over foul play. We also see here we fear cohesion will split our families in Niger, Nigeria. Residents withdraw citizenship, of course, are crying out at this time. And we also see here petrol now 650 naira in Borno, Oyo, Delta as queues return in Lagos. Work peacefully with NNPP, government in Kano. Ganduje tells lawmakers. Page 19 is where you can find details. Ritualists disguised as laborers kill Ondo pastor on farmland. Very sorry story right there. Details are on page 26. United Nations, US, ECOWAS, flay Niger's junta plans to persecute Bazoum. Well, these are some of the stories that we've had on the front page of our national dailies this morning. Very serious issues, topical conversations. Of course, one of the stories making the biggest rounds on the front pages of our national daily this morning is the move by the Central Bank of Nigeria and the new acting governor to see ways they can stem all the differences that we are experiencing with regards to the naira versus the dollar. Also looking at forex stability so that importers of fuel commodity and other commodities that Nigerians depend on will be stabilized at this time in the country. They're also saying to a very large extent they do not think it is some of the policies of the CBN that is affecting dollar and forex exchange activities, but the activities of speculators within the sector is grossly affecting these indices. Of course, they have said they're going to move to clamp down on every such speculator within the industry. Of course, there's still developing stories around the coup in Niger, the move of ECOWAS, the backing of the United States to ECOWAS at this time. One of the reports that we've read in recent times is the fact that the coupist leaders in Niger are saying they are going to try President Bazoum on counts of treason and mismanaging funds of the Niger government. This we've seen ECOWAS and other international bodies come forth to say will be unacceptable if the coupist leaders move ahead to carry out such trials on the democratically elected president of Niger Republic. Of course, widely conversed about this morning is the proposed nationwide strike by the NLC if petrol prices rises again. Of course, in the last 2 months, Nigerians have cried out as to how biting the situation of things have been. The price of commodities have consistently been experiencing a rise. If fuel prices go up again, how much more difficulty will Nigerians have to be facing? The NLC is saying that this will be totally unacceptable and asking the federal government under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to wade into the situation and find a lasting solution to this problem. Part of the solutions that have been preferred by some experts calling to the Central Bank of Nigeria is to end naira floating and also look at the instability in the forex exchange to enable marketers to be able to get commodities into the country. I think it's imperative to also add that for governance to really take effect and be effective for the good and the generality of Nigerians, it would be good if people at the hands of affairs would look into some solutions preferred by experts across different institutions at this time, not just attempting to run lone governance, so that let professionals advise the governments, let professionals advise, even the NNPCL, I beg your pardon, to be able to look at the best possible options with regards to fuel commodity in the country. Diesel has gone up to about 950 naira as of now. A few months ago, Nigerians were celebrating the fact that diesel was selling at a relatively, fair price. As it goes up, manufacturing becomes difficult. Running businesses in the country becomes difficult. Of course, we've also seen, minders of the MSME sector in the country cry out that most MSMEs and small-scale businesses are being put out of business as a result of the rising inflation, rising cost of living, and rising cost of production in the country. More alarms and more pleas are being raised by Nigerians, by CSOs, by labor unions. How much more do we need to continue speaking before we begin to see decisive, steps being taken by the government? Conversations of palliatives have remained grossly on the table or minimally endorsed by state governments or even the federal government. There's a lot that Nigerians need to be done for the country to stabilize. Of course, part of this is the cry by Ghana yesterday saying they cannot even afford to stabilize their own economy, talk less of giving military aid to the political instability in Niger. This has been a conversation that has been held in Nigeria. We have problems of our own. Moving militarily into Niger would be as against the indices of public and international relations. Your country's safety and needs must be put on top of the table at times like this. So Nigerians are saying we have problems of our own that we need to look into. We shouldn't take the meagerly sum remaining to, pump back into our economy to send our soldiers to fight. But of course, we do expect that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu knows what's best, being, professionally advised by certain people within his cabinet to take the best choice possible for ECOWAS and for Nigeria at this time. But this so far has been the much we can take on conversations on Rise and Shine this morning. It's been a great delight doing this with you this Tuesday morning. We are here because you are on the other side of the divide. Thank you for choosing Spectrum Television. Thank you for doing Rise and Shine with us until tomorrow, where we bring you more topical conversations and looking into issues that concern our country and our continent. My name remains Uyai Aneka. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of our programming. God bless you.